This episode is brought to you by American Made Maps. American Made Maps is the premier company producing printed and digital maps of all kinds. It doesn't matter what your project is, if you want the highest quality aerial imagery overlaid with customizable icons and labels, American Made Maps is the spot for you to go. So listen, check out AmericanMadeMaps.com to learn more information and sign up for a free consultation. You'll be glad you did.
Hi, this is John Stallone, and you're listening to Son of a Blitch podcast.
Hey John, how you doing today?
I'm good. Can't complain.
Right on, right on. Man, I love that
Complain.
background. Howl for Wildlife. Now we're going to chat about that and so much more, all the different things you've gotten going. But I'd love to just kind of start at the very beginning, man. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about where you're born and raised and how you got into the outdoor lifestyle?
Okay, yeah. Well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. If you haven't heard it from my accent, that I'm from New York. Um, my dad and my uncles, and my grandfather, they all hunted. Now my grandfather lived in Italy, not here. So I never actually got to hunt with them. Actually, we went hunting with them once because he came to the United States to go hunting. Well, not just specifically to go hunting, but he came here and we went hunting. Um, yeah, my first introduction to hunting was me holding a rifle at 5 years old, aiming it at a deer up in Binghamton, New York, and taking my first deer with a 35 Marlin with my dad's help, of course. I was five, but we were leaning on a fence post, and the buck was like 80 yards away or something like that. Yeah.
Nice.
So technically, I've been hunting since I mean, not technically, but I really have been hunting since I'm young, really young, five, maybe even younger than that.
So
So
obviously deer at the first, and then you kind
yeah,
of,
it
I
started off
mean,
with whitetail.
uh-huh.
Um, I found bow hunting by myself because nobody in my family did it. I shouldn't say by myself. My cousin Fred and I kind of picked up compound bows and we started messing around with that. And I did that. That was like well, I had a bow way before that. My dad bought me a bow, one of those like and it wasn't plastic. It was like fiberglass long bow, 25-pound draw deal. I started with that real young. And then he bought me a recurve, which I could not pull back. It was like a 40-pound bow. I was short stroke it, but awesome cedar shafts with these giant Zawicki broadheads on them and whatever. It was pretty awesome. But I actually ended up breaking that because I didn't know how to string it up right. But that was my introduction. Then by the time I was 13, so 13, 14, and 15, my cousin Fred and I would kind of dabbled in bow hunting on Long Island. And then it wasn't until really, oh, so I moved here. I moved here when I was 16, which here is Arizona. I live in
Mhm.
Arizona. I've been living here since 1991. And I moved here and, we hunted, but it wasn't with the same because there was this learning process, of trying to figure out things. And then I got really heavy back into bow hunting in my early 20s, probably, is what I would say when I got really heavy into it. And I like really got crazy about it when I was I want to say 22, 23 years old. So about 30, almost
And
30 years.
what were you chasing at that point in time?
Well, we were chasing everything they had here. So that was mule deer, goose deer, elk were the primary.
And then at
So
some point in time,
javelina too.
you decided to start, filming your shows. Obviously, you've had, quite a lot of following from all those different hunts and things on your YouTube. And, I'll put some links down below in the show notes because there's some really great ones you guys got to check out. But why don't you kind of talk about like that idea? Was that something that like, filming was kind of things you had been involved with before? Or did you decide, you know what, I'm doing this. I'm going to go ahead and try to document it. How did this kind of come about to where, you rose to where you are with, having such a successful hunts and getting out there?
Yeah. So basically, like in 2001, I started my first quote unquote professional endeavor. I got on Matthew's pro staff.
Hmm.
Um, and that came about from shooting 3D tournaments and having success, and I guess taking good quality photos and whatever. They like kind of liked what I was doing. And I was also writing articles. Um, in my infinite wisdom, I thought I was already a master since I had been hunting so long. But um, so I started writing articles, and then in 2004, I started the hunting channel online, and it was the first of its kind. It was kind of like it wasn't really before YouTube because I think YouTube kind of had started, but it wasn't popular. Um, we I developed the technology with various partners, and we had streaming online TV. And part of my goal at the time was because I was hungry for knowledge, and that knowledge wasn't there in a digestible form. I read books. I see actually some of the books that I read behind you right there. Backcountry bow hunting is one of
Hmm.
them. I got it sitting on my shelf back there somewhere. Um, but I read books, and not to cut down on any of the authors, but I felt like every book I read was like, if you want to find big deer, you got to go where the big deer are. Okay, sweet. Where the frick are the big deer? You know, but you're not teaching me anything. You're like, and I got really frustrated with that. And so I started, progressing um, my skill set. And every time I figured something out, I'd put it out there. I'd put it out there in video form or an article form or whatever. And then the hunting channel online, part of it was, yes, you could come here and watch TV shows and whatever and digest that type of media, but it was a hub for information, like to plan your hunt, moon phase charts, all the tips and tactics. And I started doing this, the hunting channel's tip of the week.
Hmm.
So I would learn something, I would figure it out and adapt it into my skill set. And eventually I was like, okay, this works really well. I'm going to share this with people. And then I put those out. And then the TV show came around about 2006, I think. I might have started it beforehand, to be honest with you. I don't even remember. I have to go back and like, it's all a blur now to
Yeah,
me.
it's been a while. Sure, sure.
So I would go and I started filming my adventures. But I did it because I was using that to promote the hunting channel. Everything was like I was never promoting John Stallone. I was never like,
Yeah.
I didn't start branding me as me till like 2015 or something like that. So for years, it was just about trying to gain members and, you know, push the hunting channel online. I stopped doing the TV show. Like I had a stint where I was on Wild TV. I had the Lone Star channel, and I had a couple of like I was actually physically on TV, but most of it I did it online. And I kind of pioneered that. There wasn't anybody doing online stuff and or streaming type stuff. And as things changed, people followed. There were some other pop-ups happening that were like the Honey Channel Online. Then you know, um, whole long story, but I end up losing the hunting channel, like access to the hunting channel admin because of one of my partners. Uh, I lost it for a while, which kind of like became the demise of it. But it also kind of happened during the time where YouTube and Vimeo and all these other platforms were like really taking off and doing very well. So, and then everybody like in 2015, 2016, everybody had a freaking TV show. Like everybody had a camera, they were filming, and just like everybody has a podcast now. Like,
Yeah,
so the
yeah.
podcast too. So the podcast, my podcast, I started it as a product of if you had a membership to the hunting channel, you had a podcast to digest one a month. And my podcast was called Interviews with the Hunting Masters, and I kept that name for a very long time. So I did that for a while, and I would produce one a month. And I say a while, I didn't even remember. I think it was like 6 years, and then I stopped doing it, and then there was like a 2 year break, and then in 2014, I think, or 2015, I brought it back, but I brought it to the masses, and I did it like you would have a traditional podcast now. You go to iPod or excuse me, Apple, or excuse me, Spotify or whatever, and you could digest it on any platform and take it with you. Before, you had to be a member and you used to have to download it to an actual iPod or stream it through the hunting channel. So yeah, most of it always was a product of wanting to be better. Even the podcast, like, hey, this was an opportunity for me to interview people who knew better than me. And, over time, that morphed into me being the guy that people wanted on their podcast, and, so on and so forth. And I wrote a book about whitetail hunting. I wrote a book. It's called The Whitetail Hunter's Blueprint. It's still actually available through Amazon as a downloadable, like on a Kindle or
Yep.
something like that. You can't get the hard copy or paperback anymore. And then the other book was Secrets of Hunting Western Game, and they were designed to how to style. Now that if I read them, I'd probably go back and I would kind of want to like revamp them a lot. I think I released that. I don't know. I want to say 2013 or 2014.
Do you have a goal to maybe do that and have another edition or maybe in
I, I,
electronic form at some point? I mean, you
I,
got nothing
I,
else going on,
I
right?
have two other books that I started writing that I haven't completed. One of them being Diaries of a Waiter, because I was a waiter for a very long time as a kid. And that's more of a becoming of a man type book. But the other one is Something Has to Die in order for you to live, and it's kind of tackles a lot of the stuff that I deal with in Howl with anti-hunting and educating the non-hunting public and having them, bridging that gap so they understand the difference between what is portrayed of us, by anti-hunting, the Elmer Fudd, toothless hillbilly, redneck, drinking beer, that whole, you know, caricature. Sure, why can't I say that word? that that whole identity,
Hmm.
um, or that whole persona, and how that that's a false, like a false way to look at it. So, but
Well, jumping into that is as far as like Howl for Wildlife, I'd love for you to kind of talk about the genesis of this. How did this begin? When did this first form? And, we'll kind of go into some more specifics about it. I'd love to hear about the membership and how people get involved and how we can kind of get listeners, on board. But yeah, why don't you just kind of talk about how did this come about?
it really just came about out of necessity, really. Charles is the president and co-founder.
Mhm.
I'm with myself on it, and he's really the one that kind of like turned it into what it is. It originally started off as, um, well, he had come to me. Like I said, told the whole story. If anybody hasn't heard it by now, but he came to me. He's like, "Hey, they're trying to get rid of bear hunting in California. What can we do?" I'm like, "Let's start a change.org." And he wrote this awesome like change.org piece, which um, sparked a lot of what we do today. Um, but he wrote this out, and we had like 20,000 people get involved on it, sign it, donate money, which the donation doesn't go to us, it goes to change.org. Change.org is a for-profit company,
Yep.
not a nonprofit, by the way. Um, and because of that, it was like, okay, we need to start change.org for hunters
Yeah.
specifically. And this $18,000 that was donated for this deal, this could have went to an issue directed to exactly towards hunting and fishing. That part hasn't really worked out. Um, the funding part's always a problem. Um, but the engagement and involvement and being able to move the needle, we've been able to move mountains with thousands of people, and it makes us all very optimistic in how, because there's anywhere from 14 to 16 million hunters in the United States, and if we're able to affect the change that we are with 30, 40,000 people, could you imagine if we had 4 or 5 million people doing this, or 14, 15 million people doing this?
Sure.
So yeah, there's amazing potential to um, not only save hunting and protect hunting, insulate it from the anti-hunting movement, but also the ability to get stuff back that we've lost, and to change the overall optics on what hunting and fishing and outdoorsmanship is really.
Well, and you got like your hunters and anglers that are you kind of working in tandem with some of the decision makers that are actually working on these policies, right? Why don't you give me a couple examples of some things that were maybe, very successful campaigns through how that you can kind of talk about, maybe a little feather in the cap of some of the things that you're like, man, this is something that shows that we can make a difference when we're all collectively on board, and just kind of give some folks, an idea of maybe some of those things that you're doing kind of on a week to week, month to month basis.
Sure. Well, I think, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but to date, every policy or every issue that we've gotten involved on, we've either, with the exception of like maybe four or five, we've been either able to progress forward or have won. So that in itself says a lot. If 800-pound gorilla in the room, one of the most obvious things that we've done in recent past is the mountain lion issue in Colorado.
Mhm.
So that's one of the other things we do. We take state level issues and we bring national attention to it. So that could have been a state level issue and could have stayed there, may not have passed. The guys working on it, the guys that we partnered with, CRWM was spearheading that. They may have been able to. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I do know that we had our hand on everything, and we had the ability to take that and make it like everybody knew about it. Didn't matter if you were in Florida or if you were in
Sure. Texas, yeah. No, it
California,
was,
whatever, Texas.
yep,
Everybody
yep.
ended up hearing about it, and we had huge, huge rally that even the anti-hunter said this is something they had never seen before. So to me, if the other side's bitching, you're doing something right, right? So they woke up the sleeping giant. They poked the bear too many times, and now it's time for us to get involved on every single thing. So we're hunters, anglers for ever have never been uh, very involved. They've been very to themselves. It's that mentality. You do you, I do me. It's a good way to live in a lot of ways, but unfortunately, like in this particular instance, in this time frame, we need to be activists. And activism's always been a dirty word. It's always been uh, in political sense, has been a left side thing. Um, and people don't necessarily want to be involved. They're very apathetic to stuff that doesn't physically or seemingly affect them, right? So we're trying to change that mindset. That's the biggest thing right now. Is really, you're not a deer hunter in Washington or whatever. You hunt coyotes in I don't know, Texas, whatever. And why does it affect you? Like why does it mean something to you that this guy might be losing his ability to hunt what he loves? If I don't hunt there and I don't hunt that species, like why does it affect me? And there's, we could sit here and connect the dots or draw the lines, whatever. But just hear me when I'm saying we're all interconnected. The way that the system in the United States works, we're all interconnected financially somehow. Um, we all occupy a place at what we call the conservation table, and there's various stakeholders at the conservation table, and because hunting is a user pay system, pay to play, so to speak. We typically have one of the largest voices at the conservation table, even though we um, we're not necessarily the largest population. We only occupy 5% of the population. 5% is anti-hunting, and then the rest is in between. That's oversimplifying it. There's other pieces of the pie there, but um, in the grand scheme of things, 5% is not a whole lot. So we rely on messaging and good science and sharing the truths about hunting and fishing with those other people with that strong 90% in the middle so that they don't make rash decisions and get and side with anti-hunting ridiculousness. So,
No, it's super important. I mean, I remember the Outdoor Stewards Conservation Foundation did a study, and they're talking, I think it was like around the 85% number of people who support the idea of hunting
mhm,
across our country.
yeah,
And, as you kind of lay down that 5590 number there too, like you think about it, there's a lot of folks who do that now. There's people who like don't like the idea of like trophy hunting, and that may be a different thing but that's also a lot of misinformation. And we're seeing this along the lines. I mean, there's a lot of big media that, especially in the podcast world too, and organizations such as your own that are really kind of laying down a lot of educational things, especially for those non-hunters,
right.
and people who have been anti-hunting for a long time. And I think we're seeing a little bit of an eclipse of change, hopefully, with groups like yours that are getting out there and making sure that the real truth is laid out and that we're not losing these things. Because what happens in Washington does affect the other things that are happening in Florida, whatever policy nationwide. And I think it's great when we have things like the collective efforts that came around to speak up for those folks in Colorado. I mean, it was a big win for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And just kind of in ties with that, being that that was one of the groups you worked with there in Colorado, why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the partnerships and some of the different, kind of affiliations of some other companies and, policymakers that you're working with, again, maybe on a week to week, month to month basis, whatever it may come up. And I'm sure, big red flag things that come up, you're like, we're going to put our voice out here. But, just as far as an organization, who all are you kind of teaming up with and working with in that realm?
So, I mean, Hal's really we're willing to work with anybody who sees the big picture, anybody who's willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And, we'll use Colorado as an example. We I think we were instrumental, in my opinion, in rallying the troops, so to speak, and talking to some of the legacy orgs, RMEFs and Mule Deer Foundations and so on and so forth, and getting them to understand why it was important that we needed their involvement. That's always been a big problem for hunting, is that we all have our own little niches, and there's a lot of money and effort that goes into hunting, lots, right? But
Yeah.
why are we always behind when it comes to like any issue that's involving anti-hunting? It's because we don't lock arms and do things in unison, right? Where the anti-hunting groups do the exact opposite. They are very good about getting on each other's things. So like if we go to um like a game and fish meeting, you
Hmm.
see the same bad actors there all the time. Got the representative from Hughes's, got the one from Coyote Project, you got the one from, Wildlife Forever and this and that and so on and so forth. And they're there and they all have the same messaging, and so I have on good authority, but I've never personally, been involved in like or jumped in on one of their meetings, but I can guarantee you there's a lot more collaboration going on their side than there is on ours. So when you say who did we get involved, we, I don't want to start throwing names around. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat too, that is not what I personally handle
Hmm.
in Alpha Wildlife. That is mostly that stuff is ran through Charles and through Mike Costello, where they're more on they get involved in meetings most of the time with other interest groups and so on and so forth to come up with plans and so on. So I'm too stupid to do that stuff. So I'm best suited talking to hunters and moving that needle. But anyways, I you brought up Florida. That was another like big national thing that was a positive thing. We just got the right to hunt and fish. And I say we were part of it. Travis Thompson was the main spearhead there, the guy. But we brought that to a national level where people were getting involved. So like when there was fundraising and when the open comment period was to get it on the bill, we were part of that. That was us. So that's what we do, and that's the goal for the future. Really, is to keep creating this community, to creating this unity amongst all the groups, and doing and outpacing the anti-hunting groups and what they're doing. We're I think as Hal as a group is very good at recognizing what our enemy does really well and taking that and using it against them. Um, so if there's anything, that's the underlying thing. What we're doing is, and also looking at things like more holistically, not just through the eyes of our wants and desires. There's stuff that we don't get involved in because we know it's gonna cause backfire, or it's gonna backfire, it's gonna cause conflict or whatever. And we've unfortunately, we got involved in something here in Arizona that we were kind of on the fence that we didn't want to, um, and it kind of blew up on the face a little bit. It's one of the things that we lost actually, and it was a hunter problem. It was hunters against hunters. So we typically try to avoid stuff like that because it never bodes well. I'm going to throw a little statistic out there. Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but whenever there's an issue, like, I'll give you another example. Here in Arizona,
Hmm.
we banned trail cameras several years ago. There was hunters on both sides of that. There was hunters that were for it, hunters that were against it. When that happens, if it's an issue that there's anti-hunters don't want us to use, most anti-hunters don't want us to use trail cameras. So they saw that, they jump on that opportunity, they jump on the bandwagon, automatically you lose. So, you always got to kind of keep in mind, what are you giving up? Are you cutting off your nose to spite your face? Like, you want to stop these guys from using trail cameras because you don't have the success that they have, and you don't have the time or the money to go buy them, or whatever the reasoning is. I'm just throwing out
Right.
arbitrary reasons. But what you're really doing is helping out the anti-hunters. You're not hurting. I mean, you're not really hurting that guy. You're trying to level the playing field for yourself. But where is that deriving from? Where is that deriving from? Like, where's that coming from? Is it coming from because jealousy of what this person, other person's been able to do? Or is it coming from you really want to help the deer herd? You gotta kind of look at that and figure out, hey, what am I really doing here? And when you figure that out, 9 times out of 10, and you're honest with yourself, you start figuring out, you're like, okay, I'm doing this for my own selfish reasons, whatever they are. And I'm just arbitrarily throwing stuff out there. I'm not calling everybody who doesn't want trail cameras is jealous of the guys who use them. But it's you gotta look at stuff like that, and it's been hard for me. I mean, I'm no freaking saint. I'm not up on my soapbox talking to people, talking down to people. A lot of what I'm saying is because I've had realizations in my own life, and so it's always about trying to be better, you know.
Sure, sure. Well, as far as folks who want to get involved with Hal, and become a member, why don't you walk through some of the, membership options, some of those
Sure.
benefits, and kind of where they can go. And again, I'll have all the show notes below. So if anybody, you're not writing fast, you're driving, you want to go ahead and find this out, just make sure you come back to the show notes. But why don't you go ahead and lay that out for everyone if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So, lowest level, the lowest lift right there, there's no shirt off your back is we have a free membership. And that you just go in there and you sign up. And basically what that means is you're going to get all the notifications. Um, so, and we did that because we wanted people to be involved. We didn't want to say, oh, you can't get involved because you don't want to give me $30 a year. You know, we want you to be involved. So if you're going to do that, get involved. When stuff comes up, go put your name in the hat, whether it's something you do or not. That's that's the very lowest lift. It literally will take you 10 minutes the whole year. We're not talking about a lot of time here, but that 10 minutes will go a very long way.
Sure.
And then there's our Howl annual membership, which is $30. And that comes with some features and benefits and certain giveaways and mostly like discount codes and stuff like that that other partners that we have awarded people who, put their money where their mouth is. And then you start going into our partnership memberships. Now we have a partnership with Pope and Young. We have one with American Bear Foundation, and we had hoped to do this with other organizations, and it might still happen. But right now it's these two. So you want to be a member of Pope and Young, you want to be a member of Howl. You can't spend the money to be on both, right? You can't spend $30 with us and $45 with them. But you want both. You come to Howl for Wildlife, you purchase that membership for $45, what would have been at Pope and Young, and we split that. Okay. Half goes to Pope and Young, half goes to Howl for Wildlife. You got dual membership. Kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Then we start going up to Go Hunt is one of our premier partners. And by the way, they've been awesome. If you don't have a Go Hunt membership, and even if you do have a Go Hunt membership, you come to Howl for Wildlife and you purchase their membership through our website. It costs the same as if you would have went to their website and bought it, but now Go Hunt donates 50% of that to Howl for Wildlife. As a result, you can claim 50% of that on your taxes as a 501c3. You can claim that to get a tax deduction, but we have special discount codes. You have the ability to buy stuff on Go Hunt's website for 15% less. So you can essentially buy gear through them and pay for your membership through the discount code. There's special giveaways and so on and so forth. Plus, you get to feel good about it. Like, hey, I just did something more for wildlife that I didn't do beforehand. And it's an excellent tool. I use it all the time. Matter of fact, I'm doing my tag research right now. So I'm kind of going through that. But and now this is like creme de la creme. We partnered with the guys over at Elk Bros or Blue Collar Elk Hunting. And we have put together a program called the Adventure Club. And basically, you get the Elk Bros online course. So it teaches you how to become a better elk hunter through their online course, and I've gone through it. I've actually gone through most of them, most of the big name ones. I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to throw these guys underneath the bus. But I looked at their curriculum versus what I've seen at the other ones, and the curriculum on this is on point. And I've been a student of elk my whole life. Been guiding for elk for 15 years, and um, I think it's excellent. Just the value of that. So if you went to Elk Brothers to buy that coursework, it's $350 a year. Through us, it's $300 a year. Okay. You get that coursework, you get this adventure club, and the adventure club is a whole slew of discounts. Like some of them are like 40% off, like camouflage and stuff like that. So if you go there and you can basically, again, you could recoup that $300 through these different programs. But the huge thing about this whole deal is every 100 people, every 100 members, we draw one person to win a coached, we call it coached elk hunt in New Mexico. It's basically a guided hunt on a private ranch where you're getting taught how to be a better elk hunter, and you're hunting awesome bulls. We're talking New Mexico, right?
Right,
It's
right.
not, you know, Washington over to counter tag. This is a New Mexico bull. So one out of one every 100. And it's not the first 100 and then uh your odds keep getting worse. It's every time you're in a block of 100. Doesn't matter where you purchased, you're in a block of 100. And every year it rolls. So like if somebody drops out, you roll into that 100. So it's really, you basically have a 1 in 100 chance of winning a giveaway hunt. And we cut that off at 3,000 people. Now there's other giveaways within that too. So like if you didn't win the elk hunt and you're 1 in 100, we have one in however many 3,000 people. Let's say it's filled up. 1 in 3,000 chance of winning or of winning something. Rifle, bow, vortex optics, stuff like that. So there's other giveaway. And in my opinion, I'm like, man, I just went to Wyoming. Like I just did my Wyoming tag stuff. I just spent $2,500 for a chance to go hunting, and it's going to be on my own. Like this is a guided hunt on a private place. I was trying to get, I spent quite a bit more money to get an opportunity to go hunt on a public land, whatever. You get them.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
understand what I'm throwing here. So that is an excellent matter of fact, like I signed up right away. Like of course I have HAL memberships already, but I put my $300 in because I wanted to get that opportunity. Like, hey, if I
Sure.
win this, I know it'd be probably pretty poo-poo if I won it, but uh, if I win this, that'd be awesome. It's just to me, I throw out like $30,000 a year in tag, you know, acquisition stuff, and I get a lot of it back, but it's like I can see the value in just winning the hunt. But even if you didn't win the hunt, there's so much value there. It's totally worth $300. So
Well, that's awesome. Well, again, I'll have the notes down below for everyone to go check that out. You mentioned the guide service, and there's been so many places you've hunted around. There's so many places you've guided. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and kind of some of the trips that you offer, and I know obviously right now kind of into the season for most people, and we're kind of got some other things coming up here, turkey, and I know we're going to talk bow fishing here in a second, but yeah, why don't you kind of just lay that out and where it's offered, and where all you go, what all you're hunting for.
sure. I would say I'm kind of like a boutique outfitter, and I don't do a whole bunch of hunts. We offer a couple of hunts here in Arizona for deer and for elk, and for sheep. Although I haven't had a sheep hunter in probably 4 years now because there's so much damn drum. But the you know, that's the mainstay. But I'm very selective in my process. So when people call me up for a hunt, um, I don't tell them what they want to hear. I tell them what they need to know, and it helps me kind of weed out people that I don't want to take.
Sure.
Um, and then we take a couple people every year, up to 4 people in South Dakota every year for mule deer and whitetail. Um, and so like our main bigger hunts that are a little bit more what your commercialized hunt would be. And I don't even want to say that because it's still very personable. But we could take larger groups is when I do javelina hunting. And that's probably like my biggest um, endeavor every year is, we'll take anywhere from, well, this year I think we have 8, but we'll take 8 to like even 20 different hunters throughout the 3 seasons. And, we'll have bigger camps. We stay in a nice house and everybody's got their own room. We have a camp chef and it's kind of a nice and neat thing, and had a very, we have a very high success rate on it. I think in 10 years, I think it's been about 10 years that we've been doing it. I think we've only had 2 guys go home empty handed, and both of them quit early. So, and they both had shots. They missed, unfortunately, but
They got the opportunity. That's the, yeah.
had the opportunity. So 100% opportunity and nearly 100% on the success rate. Although we have some people coming in with some young youngsters coming in this year and they want to do it with the bow. So they're really adding they're really adding some extra hurdles. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah. And then like you mentioned, bow fishing. We we do the bow fishing year round. But I would say the busiest times for us are from like right about now all the way through May. It gets really busy, and March and April being the hottest, like the 2 best months. Only because the spawn happens that time, so you see quite a bit more fish up top. But the boat's awesome; it's one of a kind in the United States, and it's probably the best boat in the Southwest. I'm gonna reach back and pat my own back on designing it and helping build it. But yeah, guys over at Tiny Boat Nation, um, check out their YouTube channel. They helped us. They helped us. They built the boat. I shouldn't say helped us. We helped them. I helped them build the boat. So it's really neat. And then we do quite a bit of predator hunting. Guys will come out for a day or whatever, 2 days, and we'll take them out predator hunting. So I specialize in bow hunting for predators. So guys who want to try out that, we'll take you, and hopefully put a coyote or a fox or a bobcat in front of you, in bow distance. So
That's exciting stuff. There's some great videos that are on your YouTube page. Definitely, we'll have the links on those for some of the great predator hunts as well. And I was kind of curious, obviously, these are things that keep you real sharp up for that, kind of fall winter time. And I was curious what your hunts looked like for your personal hunts. What do you got in the freezer that from all the bounties from this hunt this last year?
this year was probably my worst year ever.
You're
uh,
like ice cubes. That's it.
yeah, I have some bear meat left. I have a mule deer from South Dakota. Uh, have my son's black buck that we came to Texas for.
Hmm.
And I think that's all that's in there right now. Yeah.
I
I,
mean,
I
busy,
so
man. So it's hard to kind of get all these things going on and
I
helping other
typically
hunters
spend
out. Yeah.
yeah, I typically spend 90 days a year afield,
Hmm.
and I think maybe I did 35 this year. It was very so um yeah, and 10 of those were in South Dakota, you know. So like I didn't spend any time. Like so we just got done with our over the counter archery deer here in Arizona, and I got out for half a morning or half a day, one morning for deer, and one morning for javelina. And I had an opportunity and I whiffed it. I actually hit a branch. Um, just was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna get it done first day, first try, and then I didn't.
These things happen, man. It's hunting, right? It's not just shooting every time.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It still hurts though.
Oh, I know it. I know it. There's so many moments I wish I had back, but you just live and learn, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So what else you got coming up this year as far as maybe with Hal or with, maybe some personal hunts or some of the things that you got going that you're really excited about? Is there anything else that's kind of coming down the pike with any of those that you'd like to go ahead and share with some of the listeners?
Yeah, we have some stuff that we're still kind of keeping close to the cuff, close to the chest, um, with Hal because there's been stuff that was popping up that we were able to squash before it became a public thing. And there's still a few more things out there that might be that way. I will tell you there is one more huge molt. I think it's going to be a national thing, um, popping up. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I don't want to talk too much about it because one, I don't know all the details of it yet, and two, I'm not 100% sure it's going to come to fruition, but I think it will. Um, so just keep your eyes open because it's going to be bigger than the lion thing in Colorado, in my
Hey,
opinion.
well, that's something I again encourage everyone to go over there, sign up for Hal, even if it's a free membership.
Yep.
Obviously, $30 goes a long way, and
Sure.
isn't really a big drop in the bucket. And obviously, there's
No.
with Elk Bros, there's a lot of opportunities for you guys out there. But that's something that I know that you'll be keeping everyone abreast of, and as far as sending that out and those updates and how you can get involved. Signing things, getting your voice out there because it's an important thing for all of us these days to let our voices be heard, so we can kind of collectively like you said too, man, the and our hunters, they are collectively getting things together and being
Oh
strong
yeah.
as one voice, one fist. We got to kind of do the same thing, and that's not an advocacy for any violence, people. That's just yeah, standing strong here is what I'm
It
talking
sucks
about.
that you have to clarify that,
I
you know?
know, right? Because people, oh, you know what he means? Yeah, no, goodness
Yeah,
gracious,
God.
no.
Yeah.
Because, but I mean,
Yeah.
our a lot of our way of life, and all these the ancestral wise, these anti-hunters wouldn't be here unless there were hunters and gatherers that were so successful in their past
Sure.
lineage too, right? This is kind of a new thing for us to
Mm.
be anti against this way of life because it's what
Oh,
sustained us to get here anyway, right?
we're talking the last, 50 years of millennia,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
This is a brand new thing. Like
yep.
the idea that humans are not or shouldn't be hunting is crazy.
Yeah,
It's
it's in our
yeah,
blood, man. It really is. It's interesting to see all the different reactions. And I think that's important too, and for any listeners too, to be able to, whether you're inviting someone out into that lifestyle, sharing some of your meat, talking to those folks, your neighbors about our way of life. And, it doesn't have to be something forceful down their throat there, but as far as like,
sure,
I think it's important to educate folks who don't know. If you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, right? But it's
right?
important for us to get out there and, maybe folks share a link to How for Wildlife. Let, your neighbors get involved, and it's if it's for them just to free sign up and kind of get that educational Rolodex spinning, for them. So I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
important.
100%. And I think, well, that's what you just said. Really is what I've been preaching because I think it is the key to, especially at a grassroots level, the key to saving hunting, is having those conversations, being able to put into words what your why you hunt, why you fish, why you love the outdoors, um, and humanize it. I'm sure there's people out there that just want to do it because they like a big rack, or they do it because of they're an adrenaline junkie or whatever the case may be. But there's probably a bunch of ancillary things that they also enjoy about it. Um, and even though that might not be their primary goal, um, but for the most part, the majority of us, those things that are probably viewed by ancillary stuff by those guys are the main driving factors. We want the meat, we want the camaraderie, we want the connection with the earth. We want the, to feel one with what we're doing. Um, all these human intrinsic values that nobody discusses. It's always a bloodlust. It's never, about, you know, what it means to us. It's always about what they could portray. So, um, I think if you go out there and you have conversations, think about it. If I said earlier, there's 14 million hunters in the United States. 14 million. I mean, and 14 million people were talking to one person and changing one mind a year. Like what, 20 years? Am I doing my math right? 20 years, you'd educate the whole, population of the United States, and they'd have a different view. And that seems a little crazy, but it's the reality of it. Like we can effectively save hunting by keeping that middle class, or that middle class, not middle class, but the middle ground, the
Mhm.
people in the middle of hunting and anti-hunting, the non-hunters. And if we can give them a reason to stay with us and to be uh, sympathetic to what we want and that way of life, then that's all we need to do. Like, you mentioned that study that Outdoor Stewards
Mhm.
did. And usually that's done, I think, every 4 years, and it was done after 2 years, and it showed a decline. It showed a huge decline. It went from like, well, it's been declining. It went from like 85% when you and I were kids, probably, to now it's 70 something, which tells me, if you look at the numbers, right? If there's 5% hunters and 4% anti-hunting, right? Excuse me, 5% anti-hunting. If you look at the numbers, there's only 4% that identify in the world, I think, that identify as vegetarian. 1% identify as vegan. And I'm not saying that all vegetarians and all vegans are against hunting, because they're not. I've met plenty. They just, it might be a health thing, or they view it as a better way of life for them. They're not against hunting. Actually, a lot of them actually commend hunters because they're not getting food commercially as
Yeah.
much or whatever. So, but if you look at it, those are the only, that 4%, and then that 1%, that 5% right there is the only people that should have a moral soapbox to stand on to be opposed to you getting your own meat. And so what that tells me, that there's 20% of hypocrites in the United States, 21%, I think, that can go to a store or go to a restaurant, take a selfie with their hamburger, and still poo-poo the fact that you're going out in the field to kill a deer to bring home to feed your family. So, yeah, it's
Well, and even like you're vegetarian, you're vegan, the different things that actually happen in the fields too. Whenever people go through and they clear cut those, and I mean, the field mice, right? I mean, just any of the different things that
yeah,
are on
sure.
ground habitating animals, or even just the runoff that can cause from whatever it is, or even things when are sprayed as far as the development and all these different types of maybe pesticides or whatever it is that's going on to treat those or keep animals from eating those plants. There's so many different things that come into play that I don't know if everyone has that 360 view. I look at it and I'm like, there is, like you said too, right? At the very kind of beginning, it's like something had to die in order for you to live. Like no matter what it is that you eat, it doesn't matter, vegan,
Sure.
vegetarian, there's something that has happened. There is some causality of your actions of eating and just existing where it's going to hurt another species. So is this species more important than the other? And then you kind of get into this dividing area, which is a really weird gray area. And the idea of someone wanting to be able to know where their food came from, whether that's your, local farmers market, and, someone who grew it there, and, you have some connectivity in your local, farmers in that sense, or whether it's going out there and hunting and knowing exactly that, this was a wild animal that lived in a wild atmosphere of wild foods, and you become a part of that too. And so I think it's important for us to make sure that people don't get too high on their soapboxes as far as those kinds of things, because
Mhm.
everything there is an action, a reaction to every action, right? So it's all around. But no, with those some good points that we brought up today. I think maybe we'll have to have you back another time to talk about some other updates, anything that may be coming up that we want to chat about, some hot button
Sure.
issues. But as far as for that, if anyone wants to go and check out your website, for Hal, why don't you go ahead and give the socials real quick, how they can follow you and kind of become a part of this journey.
Sure. Well, for me personally, it's pretty much anything John Stallone, Facebook or Instagram, and even YouTube, whatever, if you just search John Stallone. But for Howl for Wildlife, on Instagram is where we do our most of our communications and stuff. We connect with the community the most through there, and that is howl_org. Um, and the website is howlforwildlife.org.
Right on, man. I will definitely have all the show notes again, and just kind of I wanted to ask a lot of the question, a lot of my guests the same question is one about legacy, and it's with all the work that you're doing, all the things that you've put out there, all the educational platforms that you've kind of helped to develop there. I was kind of curious as far as how you view your legacy, how you hope that this is left behind. What are some of the goals when you're doing this on a day to day, and is that something you kind of think about?
Oh yeah, I think about it all the time actually. The older I get, the more I think about what I'm leaving behind. Um, of course, first and foremost, I'm trying to leave something behind for my children, right? And and financially and other stuff like that. But the grand scheme of things, one of the things that drives me the most with Howl, yes, selfishly in my hunting, in my timeline, I want to do things to help protect hunting so that I can continue to hunt and I can continue to do what I'm doing. But the reality of it is hunting's probably not going to go away in my lifetime. I'm going to be 50 years old, you know. Um and really it's like, what am I saving it for me? No. So I take great pleasure and I get a dry. I'm actually driven by the idea that this is something that I can help protect and preserve for the future generations, for several generations. And I've said this 100 times now. It's probably getting old, but I some years ago I heard I was introduced to a Greek proverb that says society becomes great when old men plant trees of which they know they'll never enjoy the shade of, or sleep underneath the shade of, or rest underneath the shade of, something along those lines. It's translated. Um, and that stuck with me. And I'm like, I feel like that's something we should all strive to do, in our lives, not just in hunting. But for me, I feel like that's something I can do in hunting. I can plant those trees right now, and that's a lot of why that's why I had the sleepless nights. That's why I cut back, going hunting for myself this year. Um, because I feel like, I'm in a unique position to plant those trees, basically. So
Well, I'm glad that you're doing that, man. I applaud all your hard work and efforts. And we all need to step up and do things together. And How for Wildlife is a great organization that I suggest everyone go and become a part of. And following all your, socials there, make sure you go over to YouTube, check out some of those hunts you've been filming for so many years. Some great ones there, a lot of educational stuff, a lot of entertainment. And yeah, thanks again for joining me, John. Looking forward to chatting with you again down the line.
thank you. Thanks for having me.